Hey, by the way, you know what today is the start of? National Crime Victims' Rights Week. So these pro-Palestinian protesters are trying to, get more victims out there. I think that's probably what they're doing. There is an attempt here in Tennessee, and I find this actually very interesting. There is an attempt here in Tennessee to amend our state's constitution to include Marsy's Law, which will increase victims' rights. Now, if you've ever heard of Marsy's Law, you know that it has been in other states. It's been constitutions have been amended in other states across the country, and now they're trying to do it here in Tennessee as well. I want to play a little audio bite for you.
On March 23rd, 2017, a man broke into Michael's home, murdered his wife, and was arrested within a week. Michael attended 11 hearings, but not once was he given the opportunity to address the court. Beverly was never notified that her son's murderer was out of prison. Instead, she found out on Facebook.
Now, you just heard two really harrowing examples of why we need Marsy's Law. Basically, it is for victims' rights. A guy whose wife was murdered never got a chance to speak at the suspect's trial, and a woman was never told that her son's murderer was out of prison. Now, Bonnie Brezina, State Director of Marsy's Law for Tennessee, joins us on the Newsmaker Hotline. Bonnie, appreciate you being here. And after reading up on all of this, I think this is a great idea to amend Tennessee's constitution. They've amended constitutions in California, Illinois, other states as well. Talk about exactly how this law, this amending of the Constitution, would increase victims' rights here in Tennessee.
Yeah, well, good morning. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's a big week for national crime victims, so it's good to be on. So in Tennessee, we have not had victims' rights legislation quite like this since 1998. Tennesseans voted overwhelmingly to include specific rights for crime victims in our state constitution. While this was a critical, huge achievement for the pro-victim movement, inclusion alone does not guarantee enforcement of those rights. So to ensure victims' rights are legally, enforceably, and uniformly upheld, we got to pass Marsy's Law. And it also provides recourse to victims whose rights are violated. A recent example of that is in Jackson, Tennessee. I was meeting with a sergeant in West Tennessee, and he had just mentioned that one of his best friends in Oklahoma had not received notification when her ex-boyfriend got out of jail that he was out, and he almost beat her within an inch of her life. Oklahoma, we have Marsy's Law passed in Oklahoma, and now her constitutional rights are being upheld, all within a matter of days. And so that's the power of what Marsy's Law does. It's to protect our victims.
Well, there was the actual inspiration for this movement comes from California, where a college senior was murdered, and the family had no idea that the suspect was actually out of jail, and they run into this guy suspected of murdering their child at the grocery store. And so,
that's correct.
Yeah, that horrible story. So this legislation would expand the rights of victims in Tennessee through restitution, notification laws, and among other things. Now, we just talked about the notification law. It would require crime victims the right to be notified of parole hearings so that they can go watch and address the parole board. And it would also allow them notification in case somebody who they've had to deal with who is now in prison and is out, they're going to be notified of that.
Yes, that's accurate. Informed of all parole procedures, notified even upon request of the parole or release of the offender, free from harassment, intimidation, and abuse. The list goes on. And in Tennessee, we have 13. Every state's a little different, but there's 13 changes in our state. And if we're fortunate enough, we will pass it and be the 13th state in the country to pass it.
Talk about restitutional, because I find this interesting. Is that part of the deal in Tennessee? A victim would be entitled to restitution from an offender. So if a bad guy robs somebody, shoots him in the process, or whatever, that victim survives, Marsy's Law would require that the victim is reimbursed by the perpetrator. Is that how that works?
Yeah, I mean, that's usually how it is in all those criminal cases. I mean, they go for it. They don't necessarily get it all the time, but, in the Constitution, yes. I mean, it's all going to depend on our legislature at the end, I guess, when we go through the entire process, which is a very long process. But, all of that talk gets through finance and the legislature. So, yes, but that is in our amendments.
Now, this is, as I indicated, this is passed in many different laws. And what's interesting is in many different states. And what's interesting is you've got liberal states and conservative states have passed Marsy's Law. So this feels a little, I don't know, bipartisan-y. Both sides are liking this.
It is. It's very bipartisan. I mean, we passed it in California and we passed it in Florida and Georgia. So Ohio. The list goes on. But yes, it's very bipartisan. It's great to, in our world today, it's kind of good to see Democrats and Republicans coming together for victims. This is not a one-way issue. This is where we need to fight for victims and justice, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, we're talking about North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Kentucky, Nevada, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Dakota, and California and Illinois, again, passing it. So conservative and liberal-leaning states as well. I am having a hard time, Bonnie, finding anything wrong with Marsy's Law. This has been going on, again, since 2008 when it was passed in California. Before we talk about the process of actually amending Tennessee's Constitution, can you talk about, this makes all the sense in the world, why has it taken so long to make it to Tennessee? Or has it and it's just failed?
Tennessee's unique. When Marsy's Law decided to come into Tennessee, it was in 2020. So the pandemic happened.
Oh, yes.
So it got a little crazy with, the constitutional stuff that, there's certain deadlines and guidelines that got to be specific. And COVID really kind of put a stop to that. And a lot of the focus too, I think at the time was, truth in sentencing that, the district attorney conference was doing. And so, I mean, there was just a lot going on, and the pandemic just kind of put a stop to it in the very beginning. And so now we've made the changes and to the amendment, and we just passed it in the House, and we just passed it with a majority in the Senate.
But it's got to pass through not one but two state legislatures, and it does not need the governor's signature. It just has to pass through two different state legislatures. So it's already passed the first one. So in 2025, next year, you're going to try it again. And the numbers look like this is going to happen.
Well, we hope so. And the second time around in the House, we have to pass by 2/3 majority, and the same goes in the Senate in 2026. Then we go through finance, and then it goes, anytime we do constitutional amendments, the people get to vote, obviously, and it can only be voted on during a governor's election. So our next governor's election will be 2026. So we're really hoping that we're going to be on the ballot in 2026.
It is quite the process. You got two state legislatures have to pass it. Then it goes on a referendum. 2026 is the next governor's election. One of the things, and I'm not surprised by this, but ACLU has an issue with this. This has failed in a couple of states. Was that because of the ACLU?
I mean, I think so. I can't speak for other states, really. But because I don't know that much about what's exactly happened in those other states. But in Tennessee, so far, so good. So I'm not thankful.
Yeah. Let me ask you this then. What is the ACLU's issue with Marsy's Law?
I can't speak for Tennessee because we haven't had an issue with it. So I don't want to speak for other states. But in Tennessee, we haven't had any problems. So.
Oh, give it time, Marsy. Give it time, Bonnie. They tend to rear their ugly heads every time there's a good
One
idea
day
that
at a
comes
time,
around.
Dan. One day at a time.
That's exactly. Well, thank you very much. How can people get more information?
Yeah, please go visit us at marsyslawfortennessee.com. And also, we're on Facebook and Instagram, and we'd love to hear from you, volunteer. We have a lot going on. So any victim stories that pertain to Marsy's Law, we'd love to hear your story. Again, marsyslawfortennessee.com.
All right. Thank you very much, Bonnie. And check in as progress is made. So the ACLU, I just got this from my notes. The ACLU is against this for a number of reasons. They say one thing they say is that it, and this is a quote, upends the presumption of innocence. Basically, they say that by giving a victim or that family rights, you are presuming the person on trial is guilty. They say Marsy's Law has actually failed in New Hampshire and Idaho. Because of that ACLU influence, we'll have to see if it passes here in Tennessee. I don't see anything wrong with Marsy's Law. I mean, I'm trying to figure out, okay, so if I were somebody who is just predisposed to hate everything, would I hate Marsy's Law? What are the reasons why I wouldn't want Marsy's Law implemented in Tennessee? And right now, I don't see anything. I do understand the ACLU and their discussion regarding the presumption of innocence. I do understand that. But when you look at those stories, and I shared with you the stories right before we went to the interview with Bonnie, where you have families whose child is murdered and the suspect is out walking the streets. The family has no idea that the suspect is out walking the streets, and you run into the person at the grocery store because nobody, told the family that the person is out, and then they're shocked by seeing the person in the grocery store. I mean, there's a lot of good that could come from Marsy's Law. And maybe there's things here that I'm not getting or that I'm not understanding, but at least to me, it seems like it is all good. But we'll keep you updated on the process.